Well, I guess we'll get going here. Welcome to everyone. I'm sure that everybody, I assume everybody's staying warm this morning, and I know that all the teachers out there are ready to get to their kiddos, but I appreciate everybody taking time out of their morning to join us. We have a lot of honored guests here with us this morning, and I'll go through and introduce them. But more importantly, to the teachers, thank you for what you do each and every day. You know, serving our community, serving the kiddos in this community is the work that you do each and every day, and our parents, all of us truly appreciate it, because it is not easy, especially in this time. And you know, we keep getting thrown different opportunities to see how to do things differently. You know, why not now record snowfall and temperatures? You know, we had an October ice storm, and we had a pandemic, and just all of those fun things. So with that said, life is going on, and we do have a legislative session this year, and that's why we're here today. And we're going to do this a bit different, a little bit different this year, as we've talked about in our previous leadership meetings. And how we're going to do it different is I am not going to moderate this. I am not going to be the one asking the questions. Jessica Eschbach is going to be moderating this session and asking all the questions of the legislators. And I'm really excited that we have almost every one of them here with us today. And it looks like it looks like Rob jumped on. Rob got in, so great deal. And Rob, your name is now Mary Boren. It looks like you're under her name. So, but yeah. With that, I'm going to go through some introductions, and then honestly, just turn it over to Jessica and let her take this and run with it. So first of all, I would like to introduce Senator Mary Boren. Mary, do you want to give a wave there? And then, so we've got Mary Boren with us. We've got Representative Marilyn Bell with us. There you are. And we've got Representative Jacob Rosecrans with us. There he is. And just now joining us, we've got Senator Rob Standridge with us. And Rob, appreciate you joining. Glad we can make that work. Representative Virgin had planned on being here, but just like all of us, she's run into a hiccup this morning with some frozen pipes at her house. So we wish her the best and hope that doesn't go a bad direction for her. So with that, I want to welcome all of you. I know we have quite a few people. It looks like we have over 45 now people on the call. So that is fantastic. And so now our District Teacher of the Year, our state finalist teacher for Teacher of the Year for the state of Oklahoma, Miss Jessica Eschbach. Show is yours.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to Dr. Migliorino and to our guests. I'm sure that it's nerve-wracking to pass this off, and I am very unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen with me. So I'm sure he was up all night wondering about his choices. But I am so excited to be here with you all. You know, Representative Bell, Senator Boren, Representative Rosecrans, Senator Sandridge, I am so grateful for your time, especially when things have been so crazy. I've given the guests kind of a rundown, but just for the teachers and all of the other participants, just so you know, we are asking that you all limit your responses so that we have time to get to all of the questions. This committee is comprised of site teachers of the year, and they do report back to their sites. So we've compiled their questions and combined some of them together. And these are the topics that teachers in Norman are really passionate about and really want to hear your thoughts on. And we want to be able to get to all of those. So we're just going to try and limit our answers. And, you know, if the person before you states it so well and you just want to say I agree, that would be awesome. And we are going to make sure that you all have time to respond to every question if you so choose, and we will change up who we start the question with. I thought it would be super fun to have my kids pick your names out of a hat. It turns out that's not fun, and there was a lot of crying involved, so we just went alphabetical. And, you know, just trying to keep it as fair as possible. So if anybody doesn't have any questions, we can jump right into our first topic. Yes. Yes, Dr. Nick.
I failed to mention for all the guests on here that if we don't get through all the questions, the legislators have said they can stay a little bit longer. I know our senators have to be on the floor at 9:30, I believe, so we want to be respectful of that. But we may go a little bit longer than an hour, but not too much. And if there are questions that come up that we don't get answered, we'll make sure we come back around with those.
All right. So the first topic is everyone's favorite. It's funding. So obviously our teachers in Norman, our parents, our administrators, everyone is concerned about funding, especially related to the cuts that came to education during the time of COVID. We know that it was not anything we could have expected, and districts have really had to scramble to make things work. But teachers are also aware that the State Board of Equalization met and is reporting a $1.4 billion increase, which is higher than pre-2020 pandemic. So we would love to know your thoughts on how you're going to work with the legislature to help kind of recoup those costs that districts have had to deal with, but also making sure that you're not adding more mandates or limits, because districts, teachers, we're all really stretched thin. So Representative Bell, if you would like to start with this question, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica, and thanks everybody for being here this morning. I wanted to make note that if you see me twice on the Zoom, it's because I opened up another window on my phone so I could look at the chat, because I'm on my iPad and it would just make things very confusing. So yeah, funding, wonderful topic to start with. I will probably defer about specifics to my colleagues like Representative Rosecrans, who is on our Advocates Caucus and who is on A and B Committee and Education Committee, because I haven't been privy to those discussions so far. But what I will say is that I was excited to see that we might have a little bit of additional revenue to work with, because I think having the money there makes the conversation hopefully a little bit easier, because we're not just talking about, gee, we wish we could, it's like, well, maybe we actually can, because the money is there. So I'm excited for those conversations. But I think for funding overall, what I would add is that, we may have more CARES funding coming down the pipeline to address COVID concerns, which is good. But we don't want to have to rely on those funds. And I think the more we can have conversations that don't rely on one-time funds, the more that we can rely on steady funding for public ed, the better. But yeah, I think for specifics, I'm just going to defer.
Senator Boren, do you have any thoughts you'd like to add?
Yes, I sit on the Senate A and B Committee for Education, and you'd be surprised how many education budgets come through the Education A and B. Like the Physicians Manpower Training Commission sends their budget through us because it's affiliated with medical schools. So what I try to make this very, very simple. The first thing is that State Superintendent Joy Hoffmeister has asked for increased funding for school counselors. And just as I'm sitting here, one other big, I think it's retaining teachers is the other big chunk that extra money that she wants to spend money on. And our Constitution of Oklahoma puts on the legislature a constitutional obligation to fund public schools. And we have not done that fully until we meet the regional average of per pupil funding. So that's what I look at. Is I want Joy Hoffmeister's budget request to be fully funded, and I want us to work towards a regional average. Now, like in a classroom, a lot of people have a lot of wants and wishes, but we don't get to do those until we meet our constitutional obligation. So I prioritize the constitutional responsibility. And then all these other wants and wishes, and we should, or let's try this, or wouldn't it be nice if we could do this? Then I put that on, well, let's take care of what we're supposed to do first, and then we get to do what we want to do next.
Thank you so much. Representative Rosecrans?
Trying to look smart with my glasses. I thought I could see my notes better, and it was worse. So all kinds of things about this that I took some notes on to prepare. So first of all, let me tell you kind of my gut feelings about funding, and then I'm going to talk about a few bills to keep an eye on. Number one, just having conversations with folks at the Capitol, some things we're going to have to watch out for. Number one, we talked about, Representative Bell talked about CARES Act funding. Well, I've heard that, just kind of talking, listening in, that because public schools have received so much, they're going to try to maybe even that out, like, oh, that's funding for you guys. And we need to watch for that. We need to make sure that that's not funding you can count on. That's funding for, a pandemic to, PPE and those types of things. Also, Medicaid expansion. So just from conversations, and this is just listening in, I've heard a couple of times from some folks up at the Capitol who were in budget discussions that that's going to be a burden, and that other agencies, especially education, may be looking at another cut or staying flat. Just something to keep an eye on, and I'll be keeping an eye on that for sure. Let's talk about state budget funding formula. You heard the governor in his State of the State speech talk about some GO students and some average daily membership type things. I've dug into that since then. We've seen bills pop up that are going to help him accomplish whatever it is he's trying to accomplish on that. Just to keep an eye on it. A lot of them were shell bills. So real quick, that means that they were empty, no language, just a title, and the language will go in kind of whenever they're ready to put the language in. And one of these, there's no language. So we're going to have to talk about just kind of what we've heard on it. Okay. And I'll try to be quick. I'm sorry. There's Senator Taylor and Representative Hilbert's Senate Bill 823 that modifies the state aid allocations and allows for an audit 2 times per year. And that's one of the GO student bills. I haven't really just dug into it yet, but that's something to watch. So Senate Bill 823. Also, Representative Hilbert, House Bill 2078. You may have already heard of this because some of our education advocates have been kind of digging in on this, trying to figure out what the language is going to look like. What we've heard is that this bill, it's an ADM, so average daily membership. Schools are currently funded, you guys know this, ADM of the first 9 weeks of the current school year. If you don't know that, I'm gonna try to break it down. It's kind of a lot. Let me just kind of do my best here. This bill will likely, because we don't have the language yet, instead make funding based on the first 9 weeks of the current school year or based on the previous school year, okay? Statewide charter schools are facing a 15% or more average daily membership decline from the previous year, would be funded on the first 9 weeks of the current school year. That's a big change. And districts would collect and report weighted average daily membership on October 1st and April 1st of each year. The average of those amounts would result in the district's weighted average daily count for each weight category of the year. That's a lot of jargon. It's a big change. It's a huge change from what we already have going on. And a lot of people are kind of concerned because they really don't know if that's even the direction it's going to go. We're keeping an eye on that again as well. That is House Bill 2078. And what I mean by we're, not only just the educators that are at the Capitol, we've combined to a bicameral, bipartisan group called the Advocates. And we break down these bills, we look at them, I put trackers on them, and we do whatever we can to make sure and keep an eye on these types of things. That's pretty much all I've got. There's a lot more going on than that, but that's just kind of a quick little overview of what I've heard and kind of what we're seeing there.
Thank you so much. And Senator Standridge?
Thank you. And thanks for having this again, Dr. Nick. This is a great meeting every year. I think the Zoom link was kind of like Emily and mine's water situation. It was a little clogged, and now I woke up night before last to a flood out of my attic. So I feel for Emily. It's a mess, but and everybody's dealing with those issues. The funding, yeah, absolutely, it's a challenge. I agree definitely with the Medicaid expansion challenge. I think 140 million is conservative. I think it's going to be closer to 200 or 200 plus million. So, but the good news is we have some extra money this year that we didn't expect, and that's always nice when you're heading into a tough year to have more money than you expected. I would say one comment on Representative Rosecrans. Jacob did a good job explaining that. On the counting, though, I know some people are really paranoid with that, and it's not my legislation. It's not something I'm pushing, but I got to thinking about it. And as we've seen this outflux of people going to virtual charter schools over the last year or so, for a school district like Norman, you're holding on maybe to those kids because of the counting, and that's perfectly fine. That's how the system works. But think about it. If we did reduce it down to 12 months counting, that those kids come back, which is now what's going to happen. I mean, you're going to see a bunch of those kids come back as we get back to normal school. The virtual charter schools won't be able to hold on to them then. So I'm not sure whether it's defense, offense, or what, but I see that bill or that idea as possibly helping traditional public schools over the next couple of years if it was to go through. But I could be wrong, but that's how I've been kind of looking at it. But I agree with those that spoke. I don't have a lot more to add on the funding, except that I hope with this extra money we can be more stable coming out of this next fiscal year.
Thank you all so much. And kind of going off of what was mentioned in some of your responses, we're going to discuss vouchers and the funding of private schools and public schools. So of course, this is a hot topic. I think a lot of people have seen different bills floating around social media and in different places. And it's about vouchers and tax credits. House Bill 1982, of course, has been coming up a lot this week, and it brings up a lot of questions about funding public schools and private schools, and the idea of kind of bringing that bills that allow people to kind of have their money travel with them. And it's concerning for public school districts like Norman, where we rely on that tax revenue to basically fund our schools to be able to keep things going. So we would love to know your opinions on like the legislature right now strategically giving public school funding away to private schools before fully funding public schools with the public monies that we rely on. So again, specifically referring to House Bill 1982. And Senator Boren, if you'd like to start us off with this, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you. Like I said before, I prioritize our constitutional burden to fully fund public schools. It's in our Constitution. So private schools have been around in America since the inception, but actually before public schools were around. And churches and communities have found ways to provide scholarships and other ways for families that are interested in participating in that choice. They have borne the responsibility of that. If you look at top 10 states with the best education outcomes, you will not find money goes with you strategies. That's something that unique is about Oklahoma, that we have been pushing the envelope in the conversation around that. And Oklahoma has become sort of a political science and education policy lab to see what would happen if we did this. I also want to say that just broadly speaking about why do we fund public schools the way we do it? Why don't we allow public school funds to follow the family? Well, first of all, you need to look at, I tried to do the math on how much my tax dollars, if I still had 3 kids in school, how much is actually what I am actually paying out of my pocket for my child to go to public school. And it's about 62 cents a kid. And this is how you get there, and Brenda can match it up. But when you take your $4,000 that you spend in taxes, you divide it by the amount that goes to education, that's like 36 for public schools, 36%. So you take 4,000 times 36%, and then you divide that by 700,000. And so once you divide that by 700,000, it's less than $1 that I personally spent for my kids to go to public schools. So as you know, in public education, it's everybody that has kids or doesn't have kids, it's businesses, it's everybody in Oklahoma that's investing in public education for our economic future, for our citizenship, for a lot of common needs. Now in Oklahoma, with the private option, which is definitely a choice that families deserve to have, there's not accountability to the whole taxpayer population of people for common goals, for common aspirations, for common good. And so that's the big reason why I'm against it. And then secondly, and this isn't very popular to talk about, but if you look at what happened after Brown versus Board of Education with regard to public sentiment towards public schools, it quickly declined. And there was a lot of white flight, physical white flight, but then there was financial white flight. And there have been special interest groups and political think tanks that have done everything they could to defund public schools. And while some families, a lot of families really see that their child would benefit from more of these funding options for their choices, and they're sincere in that, and I don't blame any family at all, there's this other lane that has been operating since 1954 to try to slowly pull money away from public schools. And so given that I can't shut that part of my brain down, knowing that that has been another motive. And I hate to see this us versus them. And that has caused us a lot of problems in Oklahoma and America. So what I boil it down to is, let's meet our constitutional obligations first. Let's help middle-class families have more expendable, disposable income so that if they want to choose private school working with churches and local bodies, then they can find options that can subsidize that through a higher livable wage, earned income tax credit, and donations from our community. That's the right way to fund private school choice.
Thank you so much. Representative Rosecrans, do you have anything to add?
Yes, that was a very good explanation of kind of where I'm at on what we call voucher type ideas. But just to stick to the question, because if y'all don't know me by now, it's one of those things that I've been fighting against for a while, is preventing any kind of public dollars from moving from our to going to private schools. And I'm a guy that went to a private school till 8th grade. So I mean, a lot of my ideas, like you kind of hear about this play-based stuff I'm all about. My Catholic school was a play-based Catholic school. So, I mean, there's some good things that the private schools bring, but I just don't believe that they need to be subsidized by public dollars. House Bill 1982. Yeah, you guys are probably getting some emails and things about that. It's very similar to Senate Bill 407 from last year. It's a little more insidious. What I mean by insidious, I don't mean like it's evil. Just the idea is to raise the cap on what's already existing, these tax credit scholarships. They're looked at as kind of backdoor vouchers almost, because it doesn't exactly take that public money and just put it in the hands of the parents. It's through scholarship granting organizations. It is up. They got kind of smart, because see, I'm on the education committee, and a lot of the educators on the education committee wouldn't hear a bill like this. And so they, and there's a they, I don't know the they, sorry for the they, I don't know who the they is, but there is the author, and I know the author very well, and he's a true believer. It's not like he's trying to be rude or destroy public schools. He's a true believer this is the way that we can fix some of our problems. Representative LePac, and it's up for a hearing in the Appropriations and Budget Finance Subcommittee. We're all aware of it. It's something that we're very much not wanting to get to the House floor. That has been moved to full Appropriations and Budget Committee, not because it passed, but because a lot of appropriations and budget bills move from the subcommittees to the full, and that's just a lot more eyeballs on it. But remember, this did get out of full A and B last year in the form of Senate Bill 407. So I expect this one to do so as well, especially with some new members in the House that I don't know their leanings, but they were close to getting this on the floor. They were close to getting this on the floor last year and just didn't quite have the votes. So what I really want to talk about is advocacy. You need to reach out to your senator, your state reps, and tell your other teacher friends around the state to do so as well, because advocacy does work, positive advocacy. Again, these are not enemies. These are people that just don't see eye to eye with the way that we're trying to do things as well. So that's pretty much all I've got on House Bill 1982. And yeah, I'm a big no on vouchers and voucher type bills.
Thank you. Senator Standridge, your thoughts?
Sure, absolutely. I've always been a believer in school choice, parental choice for education. I think the parents are ultimate arbitrators of that decision. I don't know a whole lot about that bill, although I think in my mind, I think of scholarship, these tax scholarships a little bit different because it doesn't directly impact education funding. I mean, these are tax credits that people get for donating to a fund that then can be used for scholarships. So I'm not a big tax credit person. I actually vote against most of them. So I'm not that keen about this way of doing it. I'd rather the money follow the child, but this one is a unique concept that's been done in a lot of other states. Florida, Indiana, a number of states that do the tax credit, and even Wisconsin. So school choice is, I don't know. You know, I talk to teachers actually that teach in all sorts of environments, virtual charter schools and private schools. Like my kids start out in All Saints now. They're moving over to public school, but you know, public school teachers is primarily who taught them there. So public schools should always, I always put a high priority on public school funding because I do want to make sure that wherever a parent sends their child, that the resources are there, the quality educators are there so they get the best education. But if a parent thinks that for their child, a different environment is best, I'm going to have to defer to that parent over the system or over other people's thoughts. I think that parent is the ultimate decision maker. And if they can afford public school, private school, great. You know, I'm not for, you know, giving money necessarily for folks that can do it otherwise, but if they can, I would like them to have that opportunity. But anyway, appreciate the question.
Thank you. And Representative Bell, do you have any other thoughts to add?
Yeah, you know, to Representative Rosecrans' point about advocacy, I've probably gotten over, I think our tally yesterday was 112 emails about 1982, about House Bill 1982. And you know, a lot of those have been, you know, just sort of like stock emails, but they make really good points about the bill. And the main concerns that people have had about it, that they've reached out about, are the same ones that I have. You know, I think we've seen in recent years what happens when there's a lack of accountability and transparency about where these dollars are going. So, of course, in public education, every dollar that you get is accounted for, is audited heavily and scrutinized. But my concern with 1982 is that it's allowing for more dollars to be excluded from that transparency process, right? So the accountability is concerning because when we're talking about a tax credit, they're not under that same scrutiny, right? The other issue is that while parents should, you know, have a choice, and obviously whatever they decide is best for their child is what's best for their child, but I don't know that we should be making that a policy priority in the same way that, as Senator Boren said, we do with things that we're constitutionally obligated to fund. So those are the two big red flags for me about 1982 in particular. But in general, I think when we're trying to figure out ways to create choices for parents, I'd much rather be having a conversation, and have had conversations with parents who've made different choices in the past, about coming back to our districts and coming back to the state Department of Education and sort of holding up a mirror to them and saying, my child is not getting what they need or what they're constitutionally guaranteed, and I want to know what you're going to do about it. And again, advocating for those choices within a public system that all of our kids are entitled to. So I'm always in support of any bill that makes our system better, because, you know, unless we start talking about stripping it out of the Constitution as a mandate, then it's something that we need to be focused on and something that we need to prioritize more highly than anything else. So yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you all so much. I know that that's a difficult topic to hop into, but I appreciate how candid you all were and how amazing this discourse has been so far. So kind of still talking about funding, but shifting over to the idea of open transfers. So we have House Bill 2074 and then Senate Bill 783 talking about the transfer of students. And in Norman, we accept almost every student who wants to transfer to our schools. But you may or may not be aware that staffing is really based on that projected enrollment, which is tied to funding. And if we're seeing students being allowed to go back and forth, possibly taking away the power of our board to approve or deny these transfers, it can really negatively affect a school district. So we would love to know your thoughts on these open transfer bills, if you have any so far. And Representative Rosecrans, we'll start with you for this.
Yeah, and that's an excellent question. Again, this is something, it's a big, huge, ginormous push for many in the legislature, especially in leadership this year. Big. I haven't seen this type of kind of pressure campaign since the Step Up Oklahoma campaign. So be aware that this is probably somehow, some way, probably going to, in some form, pass. But I'll let you know, it did, House Bill 2074 did come through my committee. It's a Speaker McCall bill, but my seatmate Representative Bowles presented it, and he had talked to me about it before and kind of explained some of the ideas behind it. He was trying really hard to make it more fair for public schools because the first version that he got was not, and also some groups like virtual charter groups, some of the lobbyists there don't like this bill. So I started digging into as to why wasn't this something that wanted to be done. And so basically the gist, like what you said, it allows students transfer from one public school to another without having to even move. I think part of me loves the idea of public school choices. I love that. And that was a term that we heard in the committee itself. I ended up voting yes on this. And I was one of the only ones that did out of kind of the educator, kind of educator caucus. And the reason why I did is because I believe this is going, like I said, to pass. And I want to have a seat at the table to make it as, I guess, even-handed or fair as possible instead of, being on the outside looking in. The main issue I had and the question I asked was transportation costs for children, because otherwise it's just very unfair. Almost it would cause some brain bleed from maybe a school that doesn't need to lose the kids right now, but with the current A to F, grading scale we have, which is what they're going to use to make this decision on some of the other type of bills too, is, if you're in a failing school, which that's another one I was going to talk about. Representative Eccles, House Bill 2673, hasn't come through our committee yet, but it's been assigned. That would allow a student to transfer to school as an F for 3 years. My problem is the A to F scale itself. I think that needed to have gone a long time ago. It's been proven by experts, many different research institutions, that it's not even a fair way to grade schools. And so, that's a bigger picture. We've been trying to do that for a little bit and have had vigorous opposition against that. So we'll keep going on that though. But yeah, so please realize that I think this is a big push. You can fight against it. I think that advocacy is important. Please, superintendents, I'm waiting for anybody to reach out to me as well. It's been kind of silent on this one, and I'm not quite sure why. But I will tell you, it could have something to do with the fact it was a shell bill, and the language was put in about 24 hours before, and I didn't see it until about 20 minutes until. It was going to pass anyway. My vote wouldn't have mattered either way. But again, I wanted to kind of be there to see if I could have a little bit of say in this thing to make it a little more fair. That probably will come up on the House floor pretty quick unless we put some pressure on it to not. And that's just kind of what we got going on with those bills. House Bill 2673 from Eccles, again, hasn't received a hearing, but we still have some weeks left in our committee schedule. So keep an eye on those things.
Great, thank you. Senator Sandridge, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I haven't studied maybe as extensively. I conceptually I like it, I guess, a little bit. However, I don't want it to be unfair to schools. So, there's obviously circumstances in which a child may need or parent may want the child to move, but like I think Jacob alluded to, you don't want to, schools have to have their accounting too. So you don't want, this happening after the school's already tried to get their financing and everything for the next year. So it needs to be fair. outside extenuating circumstance. I haven't really studied a lot. I'll look at it as it goes further. I've whipped it as whip in the Senate, but I haven't really looked at it extensively myself. Yeah, I agree with Jacob. It is seemed to be a priority to some folks. So I would expect this one to move along. We'll see how far it moves, but I expect it to move along.
Excellent. Thank you. Representative Bell? Oh.
Yeah, okay. I really don't like this idea. And I'll tell you why. Now that I've had some coffee, it's just going to get really frank. Okay. I have concerns about there being a really slippery slope, not just for the school district or for the child, but for our communities. Because to Senator Boren's point earlier about Brown versus Board of Education and its direct effect on the push to defund schools, I think opening up opportunities for not just, in the best cases where a student might need different services that only a teacher in another district might be able to provide somehow. My concern is that it's going to lead to larger scale migrations when people don't like what they see happening, rather than dealing with the situation in their own district, advocating for changes that benefit not just their child, but the district as a whole, that they basically fly away to another district en masse. And this is the worst case scenario, but I think it's concerning enough to really ask ourselves why people would want to do that and what the effects might be on a community like Norman if, say, people wanted to decide collectively that they're more happy sending their kids to Noble and they have the means and the availability to drive them there every day, and they're going to cloister themselves away and ignore the problems that they see in Norman and decide that that's just going to be Norman's problem. And that's very concerning to me, because I think that the only way for us to really improve our districts or education as a whole is to really tackle those problems head on. And if the people who are really passionate about those issues are no longer there to advocate for them, then they're not going to improve. And I think that we've seen that in places, not just in our state, but around the country, where people have basically done what this bill is encouraging them to do, what 2704 is encouraging them to do, which is, just don't address those problems head on. Just take yourself to another district and make it work there for you and leave everybody else behind. That's very concerning to me. So I can see it working in district transfer wise. I've known many people who have requested those in district transfers, and I know the reasons why. And I think that that's a good short-term solution. But in the long term, I have serious concerns about encouraging district to district transfers.
Thank you. And Senator Boren, anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, I think when we talk about this, we need to separate immediate problems and long-term problems. So the immediate problem of a failing school that a parent feels neglectful to send their kid to a failing school, then, or there's some dynamic going on in the school in their neighborhood or whatever, I think I need to ask myself, what in our current transfer system is not serving that family? And that's what I don't know about this bill, is if it's getting someone out of trouble or getting a whole system into trouble by trying to change it. So that's like a big question mark in my mind. But ideally, this whole idea of just open transfer, being able to move around outside of any boundary of a district, has been, I feel like it's like the Israelites going around the mountain every 40 years. I mean, this has been going on a long, long time. This policy goal or strategy has been going on a long time. And so our failing school narrative is what happens when powerful people do not want to fully fund integrated schools. And that's why we're struggling in public schools, is that there's never been a time in Oklahoma history and in a lot of parts of throughout the United States where integrated schools have been funded. Instead, they've been feared and they have been avoided and they have been defunded and they have been questioned. And there's a wonderful podcast. I really encourage everybody to listen to it. It's hard to listen to. It's by the New York Times education reporter called Nice White Parents. And it's talking about the influence of powerful parents in a desegregated school. The last episode talks and puts forth a pathway of what an integrated school looks like. And honestly, in Oklahoma, there's a lot of fear about economic integration, racial integration, cultural integration. And because we have so many that are so afraid of that and people running around trying to avoid that, that's how come we keep having these conversations about open transfers. And I think if we take the fear away, then the funding will settle in. And that's what I keep trying to hope for. And I think Norman is a wonderful example of how you can have desegregated schools in ways where people can keep their cultural identity, but then also collaborate in more of an integrated space. And I think we're role models for that. And that's what I try so hard at the Capitol to protect. And I really admire the work that Norman Public Schools does to make sure that every person has a great chance at a good public education. And a lot of that's because of the blessing of the University of Oklahoma. I totally understand that. But the professionalism, the leadership, I think we are a good role model for public ed. And I'm just so proud of y'all.
Thank you. And we are going to move on to a different topic, but really quickly in the chat, Representative Rosecrans, there was a question about the current bill number that has passed your committee. If you could just remind everybody about that.
Yeah, sorry, I'm actually compiling a bunch of information. I didn't see that. It is House Bill 2. Give me a second. I want to get it right. I took notes. Yay. House Bill 2. You just give me a second here. House Bill 2074, and I'll type that out. I'm just a really slow typer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we could sit and talk about funding for like 5 hours if we had the time, but I want to be respectful of your time and also the time of the teachers who are here, and move on to a slightly different topic. And it's about our teachers. I mean, we know across our state, across the entire country, this has been difficult on teachers as much as it's been difficult on students and parents. It's hard to keep up with the needs of our kiddos. We've got virtual kiddos and blended kids and in-person kids, and teachers are struggling to keep up with the demand. And because of that, we're losing teachers at an alarming rate, whether it be people that are leaving mid-year or people that are not planning on coming back, or just lower numbers in our teacher preparation programs. So keeping new teachers, recruiting them, it's difficult. What are your plans to work at the state level to help support the teachers that we have, not only recruit new ones, but also keep the ones that we have in our state to make sure that our kids are getting the best educational opportunities possible? And Senator Standridge, I'd love to start with you and hear your thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, I know it's been a trying time for everybody everywhere, and being in the medical business, it's we've never shut down, so it's really challenging for all, and no less for educators and superintendents, all the other ones that are trying to get school back to normal. And so I'm not sure exactly. I'll be open-minded about whatever we put forward to help in that process. I think the changing around of schools for parents is certainly an indication that not only is it a challenge for educators, but also for those parents that are trying to find the best place for their child. And so it's just challenging times, unprecedented. So I'm sure it's going to take some unprecedented solutions. And I'm certainly for doing things that'll keep quality teachers in the classroom. More importantly, I want to make sure they're not only in the classroom, but the children are in the classroom with them, so that we can remove the masks, get back to normal. I mean, there's a recent study in Germany on school children where these cloth masks are collecting 80 to 90 bacteria and mold spores colonies throughout the day. So we want to make sure that we're not going too far with this, and we get back to normal so parents can feel comfortable sending their kids back to school. I think getting that back to that comfort level, hopefully the vaccine will get there. I think the health will better get teachers and parents and children more comfortable in the classroom, and maybe that'll help make it more secure, more stable. Jessica, I'm not sure. I certainly open-minded to yours and other educators' ideas on how we can tackle such a huge, unprecedented deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Bell, your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think with any profession or with any job that an individual, it's like a three-legged stool, right? You want for your job to be rigorous. You want to be challenged at your job. You want to be doing something that you really love and care about. You want to be compensated for the work that you're doing financially and otherwise, but you also want to be respected. That's in any job. And I think if one of those legs is missing, it's a problem. I think if all three of them appear to be missing on any given day, then it's going to lead to the flight that we've seen away from the profession. I don't know exactly how we reestablish our respect and proper compensation and enjoyment for teachers, but I would certainly hope that there are ways for us to do so that people feel like, they're not just showing up to be, just put through the ringer every single day until they burn out, but that it's something that they view in the long term as a profession that's worth pursuing. And I think the respect portion of that has really been lost over time. That relationship that we have as a community with our teachers has really suffered because of the decisions and the perceived priority that we're putting on public education and on our teachers and what they do. That somehow has to be restored. And of course, compensation in a way that, we're not constantly having people look to Texas, to Arkansas, to Missouri, to New Hampshire, to wherever as a better place for them to pursue that career is really critical.
Thank you. Senator Boren?
Yeah, so I took labor law in law school, and it was one of my favorite classes. And my husband is a physician, and he has had to negotiate contracts with different hospitals to keep him, going from St. Anthony's to Goddard. He's at Goddard now. And what I realized about teachers is that we are a high-skilled labor pool. We're not easily replaceable. So the market, just looking at capitalism, so it's like Westbrook or Harden or Durant or even the third string Thunder player. They are high skilled talent, and there's a quantity or a value to that. And if you make the working conditions so oppressive, that high skilled talent pool will move to the least oppressive place. And this is where it becomes very concerning to me, because I think that the way we treat teachers can contribute to racism perpetuated in our schools. Because what will happen is, and especially the A to F report card, I think one thing that we could do to keep teachers in our high needs schools is to get rid of the A to F report card. Because if you're a teacher and you are a highly skilled teacher that knows how to, teach a rock to read in first grade. I heard that about certain teachers at Adams. She can teach a rock to read. And I met them and I'm like, that's probably true. I mean, they're amazing. And if that teacher can go across town or go over to another district or just move to Denton, Texas and still see their parent and make, $200 to $50 or $300,000 more in their career over time, why wouldn't they do that? And so what happens then is the under-resourced schools end up with the rookie teachers, and they're there for a year or two, and just as soon as they can start teaching a rock to read, they're out, they're gone. And so then we don't have the highest skilled, the most talented, persistent, dedicated teachers helping in the most at-risk or under-resourced schools. So that's the first thing, is I think we need to get rid of things that incentivize teachers or pressure teachers to just try to go and have a flourishing life as a teacher without all the extra stress. The other thing that I think that we need to do with our teachers is, especially Oklahoma, and culturally, this is big, broad, sometimes Senator Boren goes way up high in the sky. One thing I see is Oklahoma is a very tolerant of exploiting people. We exploit labor, we exploit resources. Our marginal well owners in Oklahoma, these are the people that have owned these certain wells for like 5 generations. They're not corporately traded, they're not Wall Street traded. They're even getting the raw end of the deal compared to our Wall Street oil and gas guys. So we have a really high tolerance for giving people the shaft and exploiting them for everything. And so of course our teachers in that culture in Oklahoma are going to be treated in a very exploitive way. And you hear that with how we've dealt with the whole COVID thing. You start hearing these sounds and these messages and these expectations of teachers to just suck it up and to do more with less and to move if you don't like it. All of those things are things that an exploitive culture tolerates. And it's a really hard thing to combat. So what I would say is that we just need more districts like Norman. We need more leaders like Dr. Nick, who say that teachers are going to be respected and they're not going to be exploited. They're going to be listened to. They're not going to be attacked, and they're going to be honored. And we're going to use science and data and reason to make decisions, not political talking points off of cable news stations. And I think that that's kind of where we need to be right now with our teachers. And that's what I try to do, is I try to amplify the voice of teachers. I try to amplify the voice of reason and science, and also ethics and morality. All of those things can come together and try to get rid of the us versus them, but then also show mutual respect and dignity for all people, and not have certain classes of people or certain professions of people that are not worthy of that kind of respect. So I would like to get rid of that in Oklahoma, and I think it would really help teachers a lot.
And Representative Rosecrans, we're going to end this question with you, and then I want to circle back to our senators who I know have to be on the floor earlier, and I know those roads aren't great. So Representative Rosecrans, if you would give us your response, and then we'll move on from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I tried to, when I saw some of what this was about, I tried to get, actual physical bills that we're working on that we can talk about that are, targeted for teacher recruitment. Again, I'm part of the bipartisan advocates group, and also we have a very, very, very tight Democratic policy education group as well. And so just real quick, here we go. Senate Bill 51 from Senator Hicks, that eliminates the OGET for all certification pathways. She believes that that's just one of those other steps that maybe you don't have to take when it comes to the test. I'm alternatively certified, and I agree with that. Now, I'm also a big believer in maybe not having so many pathways to certification, but I do think that the one alternative way that we have already is it worked for me, even though I wasn't classroom ready and it took a few years. But Senator Joanna Dossett, she was just in the classroom this last year. She's got Senate Bill 215 and Senate Bill 245. That directs priority status to be given to prospective ESL teachers that's Senate Bill 215, and SPED teachers, that's Senate Bill 245, in the Teaching Certification Scholarship Program, because we have a shortage. We have shortage of teachers, but even more shortage of ESL and SPED teachers. My friend Representative Provenzano has the Lighten the Load Act, which reduces the frequency of 4 state required trainings. That's House Bill 1593. It passed out of our committee, the Education Committee, and it has Senator Brenda Stanley as a Senate author, and that has a good chance to pass because of that fact. She also has the Teach in Oklahoma Act, which is House Bill 1593, which allows teachers who are active duty in the military service, out of state, out of country, the teaching experience as certified teacher, they'll be granted the credit for the respective years of experience they had. Representative Waldron, John Waldron, House Bill 1836. This creates a data governance council. That's to review certification pathways to be sure they're producing well-qualified educators. Super important to have that. He's really pushing that. Lastly, and something I've been very passionate about, as you've spoken to me, many of you teachers have wonderful, wonderful educators for all these years. The National Board Certified Teaching Program that I'm a huge fan of, been pushing for the restoration of the $5,000 stipend for a long time as a way to make sure people understand, this is a way for teachers to really go and be the best they can be. It's professional, it professionalizes the whole education profession, which is what we're trying to find the balance for. Representative Hassenbeck has taken on this journey of mine. She's on the other side of the aisle, so it's a pretty good idea, right? I have feedback with her. She has feedback with me. It's House Bill 2693. That's up for a hearing today in the Appropriations and Budget. Wait, is today Wednesday or Thursday? Is today Thursday? Thursday? Yeah, it's up for whatever Thursday is. The House Bill 2693. It actually provides a scholarship for renewal NBCTs and a 5K stipend for NBCTs from past years. And I'm a co-author on that. And that's a really big piece we really want to try to get done. The conversation has kept going and going and going, and now it seems to be rolling. And we might have a little bit more revenue to work with to see if we can get that passed. So that's what we've got going on. I think the whole idea is to just re-professionalize the education profession and do what we can to do that.
Thank you. Now, we want to give you all just a few minutes, like that 1-minute elevator pitch to tell the teachers in this room, and so they can bring it back to their sites, kind of what you're excited about, what your passions are for this year. And we're going to kind of do that now so that our senators have time to safely get to the Capitol. And then if you're able to stay on, I do have a couple of more questions that I'd love to hear your thoughts on. So we'll start with our senators. Senator Boren, your elevator pitch on what you're excited about, and then Senator Standridge will have you next.
Well, obviously, I'm excited that we have more money than we thought that we were going to have. So that'll take some adjustment. I'm also excited at the federal level that we are going to be able to make some progress on some equity issues. And then third, I'm excited about my Senate Journal Resolution 9 to amend our Constitution to increase the rigor of our state funding formula to make sure that our funding at a state level is equitable and efficient as opposed to just a regular old funding mechanism. If you look at compare our state constitution to other states that have better outcomes, our state constitution is one of the weakest. And I think our students and our families deserve the strongest constitutional provision for funding public schools. So that's what I'm excited about.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here. Senator Standridge?
Yes, thank you, Jessica. Congratulations, and thank you, Dr. Nick, for working through a very, very difficult time over the last year on behalf of our children. Yeah, I agree with Senator Boren. I'm excited about actually having more money than anticipated. This may be about the only year in 9 that I've seen this happen. And I understand all the challenges, great questions in this session. There always is every single year. So I appreciate you putting this on. I don't think I've missed one. So I really enjoy this and hear a lot of great concepts. I enjoy it more in person, actually, so I can see all the great teachers there. They're always there in person and have lots of great questions. But this is great. This is great that you did this. But just excited about that, and excited about what the future holds for education and for our kids. And I would just like to say that, a lot of times it's tempting to, it's kind of like a parallel path to me. We got to make sure public education and all the challenges that we face are met as best as we can. Senator Boren mentioned constitutional imperative. Absolutely. So we do have to do that. But parallel to that, I would also remind, which teachers know probably more than I do, that every one of those children are on a path, definitive path, that doesn't have a cushion to fix something for them. So if something comes, that's why I'm for education choices, because I know if maybe we could fix that school, but probably not in the school lifetime of that child. And so we got to make sure we're aware of that. But anyway, appreciate it. Great conversation. Appreciate you all very much. Thank you. And I'll probably have to scoot off of here because I've got a phone call on the way to the Capitol. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, senators. Appreciate it. Safe travels.
Thank you so much. Okay, Representative Bell, do you want to give us your elevator pitch?
Sure. So in thinking about something that might be relevant for you all and for our community at large, one of the things that I've been working on the past several weeks is sort of getting the band back together here in Norman to create a coalition of people who talk about what I know our state Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services is really keen on doing, which is getting a new hospital facility built in Norman. So, right in the heart of East Norman, we have Griffin Memorial, which has been there for over a century, not only taking up a lot of space and real estate in Norman, but also sort of using spaces that are well past their expiration date, sort of, so to speak. So I've been in talks with our Department of Mental Health. They are moving forward on plans for a new hospital and thinking about what that might look like. So I've offered to them that I would sort of take up the mantle of our former mayor, Mayor Rosenthal, who I'm sure most of you remember, to put that coalition of people back together to talk about how the building itself and how the State Department can work with our community to get that done, which will be great, not only for Norman, but for the state as a whole. And I know that they're also in talks to build a potential new facility in Shawnee, to build a brand new facility in Tulsa to replace the old hospital in Tulsa. So I think, I immediately thought, once the pandemic struck, because I myself struggle with anxiety, which is not improved during a crisis, that we're going to have this long-term conversation about mental health. And so I sort of turned that focus to Griffin and thought, well, why, we've had this conversation before. Why is this not moving forward? It turns out that basically all interested parties do want it to move forward. And that now, because of our funding situation, because of, just sort of the timing of everything, that we may be able to remedy that sooner rather than later. So that's the big project for me moving forward over the next year or years, or however long it takes. But I'm really excited about the potential that it has for our community. So.
Excellent. Thank you. And Representative Rosecrans.
Yes, my passion is play. We're going to talk about this. I'm going to give you the elevator speech, not the whole rigmarole, because I think if you know me at all, what I've been working on since 2019. Right now, we have House Bill 1569. This is now called the Oklahoma Play to Learn Act. It's my total passion. Once I saw my own children had creativity and excitement to go to school, and then they get to school and it just seems to get a little bit zapped, not because of the teachers. Teachers did a great job. I'd see it as more of a system type thing, or even almost just like how the rigor gets pushed down towards the younger ages. So what this is all about, it basically will empower early childhood educators, so that's pre-K to third, to utilize play-based learning techniques in your classroom. It's sad that I've had to do this from the legislative level, but I can't think of any other way to keep a focus on this type of thing And we have a great, it's grown in popularity. A version of this did pass off the House floor almost unanimously last year. Now we have Senator Adam Pugh as our Senate author for this. It did pass unanimously out of the Education Committee. It was the first bill up. So, I mean, it's got a lot of popularity. It's got 14 co-authors, 8 of which are Republican co-authors. So that's really, really good as well. So the goal of this, I was going to tie it into a teacher retention piece too. This didn't come from just me just being like, what do I do? I put together a group of educators, including many, many Norman Public School educators who I haven't seen the list, and some of them may be on this call. And we came up with the language based upon a friend of mine from New Hampshire, strangely enough, Jessica, named Victoria Sullivan, who actually, she was a former representative and she had the same concerns I did. And she created play-based learning standards. So I look at this as a zero cost because it is. I didn't put a price tag on it because I was going to mandate the training for this. But this is not the time or place to do that right now. It's a zero cost teacher retention and recruitment tool. Our sharpest area of loss for teachers is the early childhood education area. I mean, you'll start seeing legislation come to provide alternative certifications for early childhood education because it's such a loss, and that's the most formative years of a child's education. Everybody knows that. So that's kind of what I got going on here, and it's to focus on hands-on play-based learning techniques. We also had an amendment. So Representative Hilbert, who was in the Common Education, he wanted to put a few more teeth into it, something I basically had to de-teeth it to get it to pass last year, and he wanted to put a little more teeth back in it. So there is a part in there that does prevent a district from prohibiting play-based learning techniques from a teacher teaching that in early childhood education. And I've defined those. So like I said, pre-K through third, and what play-based learning actually is. So it's not, so they can't, be like, oh my gosh, they're going to go out and play in the playground forever, blah, blah, blah. So that's what we're looking at right now. It's eligible for a floor hearing, which is great. This is early on for this. The last time I had this bill up, it's one of the last bills heard. So you can start advocating for this. I'm going to put a lot of information about this in the chat for anybody that wants to take a look at it. We also have a Facebook group that grew that has 5.4K people in it now, the Oklahoma Play-Based Learning Initiative Facebook group. So it's a big, 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 big push. Not just from me, but a lot of people believe this is the way to go forward, especially when it comes to our littles. That's the way they learn best, with their hands kinesthetically. So that's what I'm passionate about, and that's what I talk to every single human being that comes in contact with me about right now. It seems to be working. So yeah, if you have any questions, reach out to me. I'll put the contact information in the email there. I'm open for any other questions. I can stay for a bit. Okay.
Okay, awesome. I'm not gonna lie, I would have bet money that would be your pitch for that section. It's really exciting to see. So if you all have time for one more question, I am really passionate about this, and I know that other teachers are concerned too. It's about testing. This has been coming up at the state level and some of the committees that I'm on with Superintendent Hoffmeister. We know this year has been crazy. We've had the pandemic, ice storms, the snowpocalypse, students having to quarantine, virtual students, in-person students. I mean, you name it, and our teachers are dealing with it. Some educational leaders want to move forward completely with state testing because they want a benchmark for where students are to see, what ground we need to cover post-pandemic. Others are saying, our teachers know where their kids are. They're in the room with them every day, and they, this could be 2 to 3 weeks of lost instructional time to give out these tests, not to mention restrictions on people coming in the buildings can make it difficult for schools to get proctors and stuff like that. So what are your thoughts regarding the plan to move forward with state testing? And would you support any changes in place for the state testing mandates that we have in the state? I know House Bill 2030 is possibly adding the U.S. citizenship naturalization test before being able to get a high school diploma. So we would love to know your thoughts on state testing as a whole. So Representative Bell, why don't you start us off?
Sure. So, I think you've pretty well encapsulated it, Jessica, that the concerns that you've outlined are the concerns that I have. And those have all been coming from your fellow teachers, that you all know best about where your students are, and that testing at this point is certainly going to make things more difficult, not easier. I would much rather that time that we have left for instruction be used for instruction and not for testing. So I'm supportive of an adjustment to those mandates. And possibly not even just for now as a pandemic response, but in the future. We were talking about difficulties and concerns with testing before COVID hit too. And I think that now, while everybody is so focused on it, is perhaps a really good time to have a conversation about what testing looks like in the long term too. In terms of specifics, again, I'm going to defer to Representative Rosecrans about those tests, because I know he's been in the classroom, he's administered those tests right along with you. But yeah, conceptually, I think it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to try and keep to something that we know was causing concern to begin with pre-COVID, much less post-COVID.
Thank you. And Representative Rosecrans?
Yeah, one of the reasons why you're talking to Representative Rosecrans right now is because I became a teacher and I taught in an untested subject and was just like, wow, this is really cool. A lot of freedom, creativity. And then I taught in a tested subject right after that year. And I was like, are you kidding me? Is this how bad this really is? How narrow the curriculum gets and everything else? And so I decided, at the time, I didn't know it was a federal mandate. I had to learn all this. And I was like, oh man, I got to do something about this. I'm going to run for office and get my voice up at the Capitol and the tests. And I get up there, I'm like, oh man, I would have had to have been appointed by the president. Okay. But it is a passion of mine. I've been reaching out to Superintendent Hoffmeister. We have a decent relationship. And I've been like, hey, we've got a new guy up here, about to at least, Miguel Cardona. Dr. Miguel Cardona from Connecticut is going to be our new Secretary of Education. Hasn't really tipped his hand how he feels about the mandates, the federal mandates coming down, but I'm hoping that administration will start looking a different way, because this is just not working. It was meant to show accountability for schools, so you would have a good school for everybody, I guess, well-meaning, but it totally isn't working that way. And I'm a huge believer in that the teacher it's the way it was whenever I was growing up. I had one standardized test. Iowa Basic Skills in 8th grade made me feel like a ding dang genius. And I liked tests back in the day. Then all of a sudden we get this overkill of testing, pre-test, post-test, pre-test, post-test. Okay, fine. If that comes from a teacher, cool. I'm with that. If this certain site wants to do that or a district wants to do that, go for it. A state mandate or a federal mandate, I just don't see how it's helpful for teachers. I think it's harmful for the education profession. I think it's a huge reason why we've had so many teachers that are just out, because they're not trained to be data geniuses. Well, let's have a data meeting. Whenever I was teaching, I was like, God, no, not another one. Like, what? Like, you can't do it. I am not a math genius. I'm a history guy, by golly. And so I was trying to write my own history by trying to get elected and end these things. But I do have good conversations. Like I said, I'm requesting Superintendent Hoffmeister to request a waiver this year. It doesn't look like it's going to happen because of what Representative Marilyn Bell said, or what Marilyn said. Sorry, the title. It's because it's looked at as a diagnostic tool. Well, great. You don't even get the results back until way after the fact. It can be used for a diagnostic tool. You guys know this. It's no secret. And it's also a horrible way to show, what a teacher has taught some kids, because kids come to us from all different levels. Like, you never can tell. Like, I've had 7th graders who didn't know their continents, and I had to give them the state test, and I was like, it ain't me. I did my best. They knew 2 out of 7. I did, And so I think it's unfair. I think it needs to stop, not just for the pandemic, especially during the pandemic, but afterwards too. Why don't we take a look at more authentic assessments? There's so many out there. We're talking about like portfolios, hands-on. Once again, the teacher really digs in there and gets to know their kids and can tell you guys already know where your kids are. I know we have huge class sizes, maybe not so much right now, but come on. I knew where my kids were. I was like, that kid, he's awesome. He's great. Can't read. Straight up. Just, you know it. And if you can't read, you're not going to be able to pass the geography test. Just straight up. So it's one of those things where I'm really, really, really passionate about and fighting. And I have some pretty good allies because get this, some weird bedfellows here. Really, really, really conservative folks hate federal mandates too. So I'm trying to really just cross that bridge and bring it up and make it happen. And I'll just continue that fight. Hate them.
Well, I think I could go on for hours, like I said, but we want to be respectful of your time and the time of the teachers who have, of course, a lot of things they have to do today as well during this virtual learning day. Not speaking for Norman, but just speaking for myself, thank you for the fight that you're leading towards education and equity for our students. I think there is a misconception that teachers, need to get back to work or, like they haven't been working. And from what I've seen in my school and with my friends, I don't think teachers have ever worked this hard ever to make sure that things are okay for our kids. So thank you for supporting us and getting that message out in the state that, everyone is doing more than the best they can. And thank you for your time today. I'm so grateful to have the chance to talk to you. Yeah.
Real quick, I'm wanting to talk about real quick advocacy. I'm putting some tools into the chat for everybody to see. It's a bill tracker that I use all the time. A lot of times I just hit the bill track and boom, it goes through the committee. You can see it. And also it is a legislative guide and also a link to find out who your state reps and senators are that you can share off to other people, because that's the key, is knowing who to speak to in the first place. And I'm dropping that in right now. And I really thank you all very much.
It sounds like we all need to hop on our personal emails and be getting out and talking to our state reps and senators. Dr. Nick, back to you.
Yeah. So before everybody starts jumping off the call, I would like for everybody in the chat right now to send some love to Jessica for the great job she did. I mean, fantastic. You set the bar this year for all of those for the next few years. This is the way we're going to do this. So blow up the chat with some love for Jessica. Great, great job. So proud of you. So proud of you. To our guests, legislators, those who are still on the call and those who had to jump off, thank you so much for spending your morning with us. This is what makes Norman great. You never have this many legislators and show up for an early morning with or without coffee, Jacob, call to talk about things and tough questions. Jessica didn't shy away from anything, threw some tough questions at you guys, and I appreciate you speaking your heart and sharing that. I also want to thank all the teachers who are on the line. I know we actually had some teachers and some teachers brought in their student teachers to listen. I want to thank our board members. All the board members were online. I want to thank the cabinet and all the administrators who popped on. So everybody have a great day. I appreciate each and every one of you. Be safe, be warm, take care of the kids. And if you get engaged, email, talk to your legislators, lobby for what you believe in and lobby for public education. Guys, thank you very much. Have a great day.